Welcome to episode 11, Check the Gate, one-on-one with the Northeast Filmmakers Lab. I'm Mike Camoin, and I'll be your host. Our guest today is Dan Mirvish. Welcome, Dan.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being with us. Now, you're all the way over in Culver City, California. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of, it's its own city, but it's in LA, and I'm about a block and a half south of the Sony Studios lot, the old MGM lot. So technically they're in my shadow.
How dare they? I usually start off with a drink. I've got Josh red wine. I've got water. Any preference?
Water sounds great. Yeah.
Now it's lunchtime over there. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I'm happy to do this. I'm going to pass this all the way across the country. Can you reach that?
I got it. Okay, great. Thanks.
Oh, there you go. How about that? Movie magic. Check the Gate is a weekly program through June 2020, supported by the Capital Cinema Cultural Exchange, a charitable nonprofit empowering emerging filmmakers to complete and present their works through this rapidly changing media landscape by leveraging world-class industry expertise through the Northeast Filmmakers Lab. Submissions to the Northeast Filmmakers Lab, the 7th edition, is now open on Film Preway. Apply on our website, cinemaexchange.org. Everyone on this chat, if you're looking for a 50% discount, use the student rate or check out our early bird special. There's nothing better. Thanks to our co-producer, Eric Volweiler, publicist Tammy Reese, and behind-the-scenes student intern, the Great Dane from UAlbany, Luke Williams. Today's sponsors include Price Chopper, Market 32, Albany Wine and Dine for the Arts, Crew Me Up. Let's see, where's my Crew Me Up logo? crewmeup.com. Connect, Create, Collaborate, and yayflix.com out of Toronto. Next Thursday, June 4th, Joe Carr of Josh Cellar Wines will be with us. Also, you can donate. Check the Gate. For those who don't know the term, when the gate is good on production, if there's any impurities, we wait until that's all cleared up, and then we get to move on. And with that, let's move on. I'd like to introduce Dan Mirvish, our director, screenwriter, producer, and author. Dan was filming 18 and a Half, a Watergate conspiracy thriller, dark comedy, before being forced to take a pandemic pause. Dan has been mentored by Robert Altman on his first film, Omaha, the movie, which led to co-founding the upstart SLAMDANCE Film Festival. His film Open House, prompted the Academy Awards to controversially rewrite the rules of the Best Original Music category. And there's more that I'll read throughout. Dan, you've got quite a resume. Thank you for being with us.
No, thank you, Mike. Happy to be here.
So tell us, how are things going? Your business, obviously the movie 18 and a Half is on a pandemic pause. Where do you want to start?
Well, so yeah, we were shooting my new film, 18 and a Half, which is a Nixon conspiracy thriller, as you said, dark comedy. We'll see if you laugh or not. But we were shooting it out on the tip of Long Island. My friend Terry Keefe has this great motel and kind of beach resort called the Silver Sands Motel and Cottages out in Greenport, which is the very sort of almost the very tip of the North Fork of Long Island, just above Shelter Island. And it's a great location. And so we had kind of written the whole script. My writing producing partner Daniel Moya, he got involved. It turned out his aunt and uncle owned a restaurant out there as well, a great place called the Front Street Station. So we were shooting the film out there. It had a fantastic crew. And we were almost self-quarantined because we had this sort of 80-acre compound that we were shooting almost the whole movie in. And we were about 2 weeks in, and with about 80% of the film in the can. And that was right around the middle of March. And finally the outside world kind of got the better of us, and we had to take a pandemic pause, as I've been calling it, and shut everything down for the time being. And hightailed it out of there, or at least most of us did. We actually left 7 of our crew members there, or 8, including Terry. And they were there for about 2 months. They actually stayed there because they figured it was safer than going back to their respective houses in Brooklyn and apartments and that sort of thing. So, and one of them, our DP, Elle Schneider, is actually still there, I think, as of 2 days ago, she was still there. And Terry, of course, is still there. So,
Getting B-roll shots, you think, or pickup shots?
I hope so. But they were mainly there just to ride out the quarantine. So they actually shot a couple short films. They shot a music video for one of our PAs, who was also a musician. And so they had a great time out there. They were the quarantine out there, and hopefully they shot some extra B-roll and exterior shots and inserts. But we'll see. I haven't seen that footage yet, so let's see what there is.
Tell us about 18 and a half, and is it co-written by Daniel Moya?
Yeah, so Daniel and I kind of wrote the story, and then while I was finishing post-production and going to festivals around the world with Bernard and Huey, my last film, I sort of entrusted Daniel to finish out the script. And and it's about the missing Nixon 18 and a half minute gap in the Nixon tapes during Watergate. And it's kind of speculative historical fiction about a young woman in the White House who gets a hold of the tape and wants to leak it to a reporter, and they decide to meet. And we're saying they're meeting in St. Michael's, Maryland, but we're actually shooting it in New York. And then, of course, it turns out nefarious people are out to get them and the tape as well. So it doesn't end well for everyone. And yes, we have a terrific cast and crew, and it looks great. I mean, I've been editing the footage ever since we got back. That's what I was doing this morning. And the film looks and sounds great, fantastic performances, great costumes, great production design, cinematography, everything's in focus. It's supposed to be in focus. And actually last week we were, it's a testament to what you can still do in this time. We actually recorded the 18 and a half minute tape itself. We had 3 actors that we were going to always do this in post-production anyway. And we just figured, well, we may as well do it now. So we got the actors on Zoom calls just like this, but then had them record separately into separate mics, onto their computer or their phone, and then send me those clean tracks. And it was great. It was like doing a little radio play, but actors are available now. They want to work, they want to do things. So, and honestly, the pandemic kind of normalized this remote audio in a way that, otherwise it would have cost us an arm and a leg to get studio time, get all these actors. Just scheduling them would have been a nightmare. And all of a sudden now everyone's like, oh yeah, of course I'll do it from home. Well, that's the only way to do it. So there are actually some weird advantages to working in a pandemic. So, and then meanwhile, we still have 4 days left to shoot on the shoot, and that we don't know when we're doing. I'm guessing probably August or September, but we're just waiting to see when it's safe to go back and under what circumstances and protocols.
Now, is 18 and a half a union or an independent project? And how did the shutdown come about?
So it's union in the sense of I'm DGA, Directors Guild, and I had a DGA team. DGA has a really good sort of low budget, process, and it's SAG. But it's no, I mean, the shutdown came about. It was really, it was a confluence of factors, as all these things are. We had a day off scheduled on that Monday, March 15th or 16th, and we had these 4 extra days. And there were those 4 days that we had left had a number of other actors that weren't already there. And so it was becoming challenging just to get people out to New York. There were a couple that were flying from LA, and they were literally calling us like almost from the airport saying, do I get on the plane? Do I not get on the plane? Because at the time there were rumors going around that domestic travel might have been cut off, that week. And we just didn't know. CDC was still saying that you could have 50 people in a room together. And that was our last night of shooting. We only had about 23 people on crew. But sure enough, the next day, that recommendation was down to 10 in a room. So we definitely picked the right time to shut down. And it was a mutual decision from everyone you know, I mean, it was ultimately my decision, but it was, you know, everyone on the cast and crew kind of, you know, were aware of what was going on, and it was, you know, and in retrospect, it was the right time to shut down. We sort of got as much done as we could in a sort of almost self-quarantined situation. It wasn't hermetically sealed, but it was pretty close. So we were, and in fact, a lot of what we were doing was very similar to what the kind of expected protocols are. Everyone was living in their own rooms. We were, you know, people were using this, you know, would go back to their rooms to use their own bathrooms, things like that. So we were already doing a lot of those things, and we just had a minimum number of crew, which is of course what the recommendations are going to be, you know, and almost, you know, hardly anyone at Video Village. There wasn't a Video Village, you know, it's just me and the script supervisor. So, so I think we'll be a little bit, you know, in a weird way, low budget films a little bit more nimble, and it could be easier for us to go back to work when all's said and done.
Yeah, thanks for that. And it sounds like a smart choice, and because of its scope, you were able to make those decisions. And it sounds like you're going to go back this fall in the off season, and that hotel will be available again.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's the thing, is they're closed in the winters, so that was kind of what gave us the idea to shoot the film then. And March was kind of, you know, beginning of March was sort of the end of their off season. Terry is just starting to have people come back there now. He's at about half capacity, but you know, you know, as far as like, you know, regular guests, but yeah, he's usually pretty packed during the summer. So, but probably by September it'll be a good time for us to get back. The hotel will be kind of emptied out again. There'll be room for the crew, and that's probably when, you know, a lot of productions are going to be back. But then it's going to be about scheduling the actors that we have to get back, because, you know, they may get booked on a Netflix series and then we're hosed, you know. So because 4 of the actors we have to, you know, are continuously in, you know, are in scenes that we have to, you know, shoot the next scene with them. Some of the other actors, you know, I don't know, I mean, if they're busy we can recast them, but there's at least 4 actors that we need to bring back.
Can you tell us who's your stars in there, and of those 4 main actors?
Yeah, I can't talk about that just yet.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, we, you know, normally we would have done a press release like in the middle of production or right at the end of wrap, and then with the pandemic, yeah, we haven't cleared, you know, we haven't cleared it with all of the actors and their agents to do a press release. And honestly, we were still casting some of the voice roles last week, so, you know, we wouldn't have known any sooner. But yeah, so I can't say, but they're great actors, fancy actors. You'll recognize some of them and some you may not, but you know, really fantastic cast, and they all committed, you know, to really, you know, working through the beginning of the pandemic, and then they've all committed to coming back when it's safe to do so.
So 18 and a half is kind of emanates from Washington, D.C., and you're not unfamiliar to...
I was a Senate speechwriter. I was a speechwriter for Senator Tom Harkin for about a year and a half back in like 89 to 90. And so I love working in Washington. I met my wife in Washington, and I actually co-wrote a novel about 10 years ago with my buddy Eitan Gorlin called I Am Martin Eisenstadt, which is all about a Washington-based pundit, which also has a Watergate chapter in there. And so I'm definitely familiar with the scene there, and have always, and I mean, I was a history and poli-sci major. One of my professors was Tom Eagleton, who was McGovern's first running mate. So, you know, I've known and met some of the people, you know, from that era. And so I've always been fascinated with Watergate. So it's something I've been wanting to delve into that world for a long time. And this, you know, when Terry told me about this motel, it was kind of the perfect time to do it. And it was right after seeing, like literally an hour after seeing Jules Feiffer, who wrote my last film, Bernard and Huey. And Feiffer was a, you know, Pulitzer Prize, Oscar-winning cartoonist, and he has a whole compilation book called Feiffer on Nixon. He wrote a ton of cartoons about Nixon, and we were seeing him literally the day after the 2016 election. So we were talking a lot about Nixon and Trump and sort of the comparisons there. And that sort of, and then when Terry said, oh, I've got this great motel that, you know, and Terry inherited it from his grandparents, and you know, they built it in the late 50s and 60s and kind of stopped renovating it around 1974. But Terry's a savvy guy. He's an indie filmmaker himself, so he's maintained it and maintained the kind of the cool vintage look to this place. You know, turquoise and pink and great neon sign. And so he has about he gets about 90 fashion shoots, still fashion shoots a year out there, and you know, because they all love the vintage vibe, and music videos have shot there, and commercials and episodics, but no one had ever shot a feature. So he said, hey, Dan, if we come up with a good 1970s, you know, movie, let's shoot it out here. And I was like, all right, we got a location, you know. And then Daniel said his aunt and uncle owned a diner. So we're like, well, now we got 2 locations. We got to make a movie, you know. That's all it takes.
So it looks like this could be wrapped and done with post-production by later this fall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a funny workflow because we are working on post-production in the middle of the shoot. But like my composer, Luis Guerra, who is a good friend of mine, and we work together on Bernard and Huey, he's already been working on music for the last 2 months, well, largely because he doesn't have that much else to do. And he's very dedicated to the film. I mean, we were working on music even while we were in the script stage on this film. There's a lot of bossa nova and kind of Brazilian influence music, but he's been able to look at cuts of scenes and sequences and reels for the film that are kind of self-contained. And he's been able to start the composing process and working with musicians that have been recording tracks in their home studios. And so a lot of that will already be done by the time we even start our pickup days, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like there are some advantages to this time period that creatives can, you know, employ. When I was on IMDb, I noticed that you list a lot of people under thanks. Are those all your investors, contributors, sponsors, helpers?
We did a crowdfunding campaign on the film back in the fall. We did this one. We did through Seed and Spark, through our friend Emily Best over there, and we have close to 300 backers, and it's people ranging everywhere from $1 to $40,000. You know, some are investors, some are donors. We also have a continuing relationship with a nonprofit fiscal sponsor, the Film Collaborative. So in addition to the Seed and Spark campaign, people also gave us money through Film Collaborative, which is great because then they get a tax deduction out of it. And also that site stays up sort of indefinitely compared to like a limited, month-long campaign. So yeah, so those are all the people that have really gotten involved, and a lot of them are old friends that I grew up with in Omaha. People that have contributed and crowdfunded my prior films, and yeah, it's a great community of filmmakers, and so they've been great. All of them have been really supportive. They've been getting updates, during the shoot, after the shoot, when we went on our pause. They've been getting little teasers of footage that we shot, and that are exclusive to them. So and the response back from them has been great too. Like they've really enjoyed what we've been showing them, and love the music that Luis is doing, and the whole look of the film. So
are you still open to getting donors, contributors?
Funny you should say that. Yes. Yes, of course. Yeah, no, look, we're doing these pauses is not cheap. You basically have to rent equipment. We're going to have to rent equipment a second time. We're going to have to hire crew a second time. So it's going to cost extra, and it's a little unclear, maybe an extra $30,000 that we weren't prepared for, plus post-production, which we hadn't raised anyway, So yeah, we probably need to raise another $50,000 or so just to finish the film. So yeah, we were actually, Daniel and I were just talking yesterday, we may do another campaign, when we get closer to shooting and we know exactly how much more we need to raise. But also, we'll be looking to other equity investors who want to help us finish the film. But I've always had good luck. Like once you have in this case, 80% of the film in the can, it's much easier to raise money, obviously, than when you haven't shot anything. So I feel confident that we'll be able to raise some more money.
So what's the website where we could send folks who are listening that this will be rebroadcast as well? Is there a website folks can go to?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, they can always go to, the easiest is danmirvish.com. And you can find links to all my stuff on there. But, and then just look for the 18.5 section, and then that'll take you to the Film Collaborative page. Or you just go to the filmcollaborative.com and look at, it takes a little while to find like current projects, but then look for 18.5, and there's a way to give us money if you want. But I usually put updates on Facebook and Twitter as well. So.
And is there any limit? Is there any minimum? You're open?
People can give me however much money they want.
No limit to that, right?
That no, definitely. I mean, if the way we're set up as an LLC with and so investors, there's essentially a minimum of like $5,000 if you want to invest in the film. But if you want to donate to the film, there's no minimum, there's no maximum. As I say, like, well, people can give us $1, or $10 or $10,000 or $100,000, and that would all be greatly appreciated.
And will they all get listed? I know they're going to get listed on the IMDb. Will they make it to the closing credits as well, or?
So I think we have a threshold. If you give $10,000, you get an associate producer credit. If you give $20,000, I think it's a co-executive producer, and if it's $40,000 or more, you get an executive producer credit. So yeah, absolutely, there's credits available. But but what I found is that people don't always do this just for the credit. They're doing it for the experience. All my films have had a great track record going to festivals. My last 2 films went to over 30 festivals. The last one went to 30 festivals on 5 continents. But what's also kind of nice and unique is that if I can't go to a festival to represent the film, I reach out to my backers, to my investors and Kickstarter or Seed and Spark backers in this case, and say, hey, if you're in this town, please come not only check out the film, but go do the Q&A too if I can't be there, and that because they the updates, they know more about the film than most people anyway. So it's a way to keep people involved. You're not just giving money to a film, you're part of a community that is making a film all together.
That's a great collaborative, and that's a word that we try to use around here. Pull people in, get them to collaborate with you, and that's how it works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which I want to go back to Omaha, your first feature, and the creation that leads to the creation of SLAMDANCE. I know you've told the story probably 1,000 times, but and it's now historic there on Main Street. Can you tell us how that all came about?
Sure. I grew up in Omaha, and like most people did, and after working, got my undergrad degree in St. Louis, went to Washington, as a speechwriter, and I had taken some summer classes at UCLA Film School while I was an undergrad. Which were great. I sort of said that kind of stoked my interest in film. But then I worked in DC for a couple of years and realized if I stayed there, by the time I hit 30, they would just give me a law degree and a 3-piece suit by osmosis. And so I thought, well, I don't really want to do that. So I applied to film school, and the only one I got into was USC. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll go there, I guess. And
Very good.
Yeah, thanks. So I went there in the early 90s, and most people were doing short films then, which would cost an exorbitant amount of money. The school would own it, and then they would be great DP. They would be great reels for the DP. So I thought, why not just cut straight? And then they'd go to meetings, and people would say, "Well, that's great, kid. Now let us know when you've done a feature." And so I said, why don't I just start with a feature? So I actually, summer after my first year there, I got a great job working on a bad kickboxing movie in the Philippines. But I learned a lot. I mean, I really learned how to make a movie from beginning to end. And that kind of gave me the confidence to, then my second year, I wrote the script called Omaha the Movie, because also it was kind of inspired by the location. My buddy Phil called and said, hey, have you heard about this great location called Carhenge, which is an exact replica of Stonehenge built out of old American cars stuck in the ground out in western Nebraska.
I saw that in your reel on your website.
And
Carhenge. Yeah.
video there, and I go, no, that's too good for a music video. Let's shoot a feature. So I then wrote the script around that. Basically, I had the characters wound up there. You know, I was a big fan of Hitchcock, and he always ended his films at big national monuments like Mount Rushmore, which is actually not that far from Carhenge. So, and I had friends from high school and beyond that were still actors in Nebraska, in Omaha. So I was like, okay, well, I just need to get my actors from Omaha out to western Nebraska. So came up with this kind of, you know, chase comedy, 20-something chase comedy movie, and that would wind up with a fight scene out of Carhenge, and as an ode to my kickboxing roots. And then just went out to Nebraska. I told the film commission, hey, I need a local producer, because I was the first one making like a local independent feature out in Nebraska, basically. And they said, oh, well, there's this guy Dana who does a lot of commercials, but he wants to get into features. And by the way, his grandfather's Robert Altman. I said, he's hired. So Dana Altman became my producing partner, and is still to this day one of my producing partners. I was just emailing him this morning about Omaha the Movie, because we just got dumped by our distributor this morning. So yeah, 25 years later or longer, you still have to deal with these films, you know, one way or the other. That's certainly one of the lessons. That was actually good news, because we wanted to rescan the negative, and we had already been talking to Criterion about re-releasing the film through them. So it was actually good news that we got dumped by the distributor, because they had kind of a crappy version of the film anyway. So, but the film, we were very happy. We shot it on 35 millimeter Panavision at the time, edited the film on the Paramount lot. And when it was done, figured, oh, we'll go to Sundance. In fact, we even had distributors tell us, hey, we love the film. We'll pick it up for distribution if it gets into Sundance. And that was really, you know, mid-90s, that was really the paradigm. Like, if you got into Sundance, great, you get distribution, you get an agent, you get a girlfriend, what, you know, like everything would go right for you. And if you wouldn't,
You can get anything.
no, nothing, not even a steak knife. You wouldn't get into other festivals, because all the other regional and international festivals would use the Sundance program as the kind of the shorthand for, oh, these are the indie films this year, great, these 20 films get to go on the circuit for the whole year. So we had heard about a couple individual filmmakers a year before. James Marandino had a film called The Upstairs Neighbor. A couple of little guys named Trey Parker and Matt Stone and Jason McHugh. Their University of Colorado thesis film called, or later it would be called Cannibal the Musical. Anyway, these guys didn't get into Sundance in '94, so the year before us. But they did their own little renegade screenings in Park City. So we thought, okay, well, that'll be a great sort of plan B for us, you know, if we don't get into Sundance. And sure enough, we didn't get into Sundance. So another filmmaker friend of ours, a guy named Shane Kuhn, and his partner, Brandon Coles, who also had shot in Nebraska, but were also, you know, based in LA. They called me up and they said, why don't we do this, combine our resources and start this thing called SLAMDANCE? I said, that sounds great. Because if you think about it, 95 was kind of a pivotal year in the history of independent film. It was kind of the year that around that time that Miramax became part of Disney, Fine Line became part of Warner Brothers, Fox was launching Fox Searchlight, and it was kind of the Hollywoodization of independent film. And Sundance, you know, which had this great sort of generation, you know, from the late 80s to early 90s of independent filmmakers, they were just like, woohoo, we're going on that Hollywood train. And, you know, come on in, Harvey. And they you know, took Hollywood money and you know, and they started focusing more on second-time directors and films with bigger budgets and films that already had distribution. And they kind of left behind this niche of the first-time indie directors like us. And they didn't show as many films then as they do now. So there was this kind of, you know, gaping niche for first-time indie filmmakers. And so January 95, we took a dozen features and a dozen shorts. We all combined resources and a little bit of money. And we showed up in Park City and just started running our own film festival. And 26 years later, we're still doing it.
You know, and thank goodness, because that sort of broke the mold. Even I think Roger Ebert applauded the effort at that time. I think I made it out in 1998, like 3 years later.
Yeah.
I couldn't get into anything else at Sundance, so I ventured up the hill. And I saw a movie, I don't know if you recall, but I think it was something like Passport or you know, it's about this guy who has a camera and it allows him to travel.
Yeah, yeah.
And I forget the exact title to it, but I saw it there at SLAMDANCE, and I was like, oh, he was such a great speaker, and it empowered me, like anything else. And so I was able to go home saying I saw a movie and I met a filmmaker and hung out there and networked, and it was worth the trip from actually, we drove out there on Dances on Wheels, which was an RV that broke down 3 times on the way out, but made it there to Park City. So part of that next wave of, after you created SLAMDANCE, all these other dances were coming.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it was a fun time, and SLAMDANCE has always been, you know, at least in our competition films, it's always been focused on first-time directors. So we've shown like 98. That was the year the Russos. No, that was 97. 98. Anyway, we've shown the first films of people like the Russo brothers, Christopher Nolan and his wife Emma Thomas. We showed Lynn Shelton, the late Lynn Shelton's first film. Ryan Johnson's first film. Ryan was actually PA on Omaha the movie. Sean Baker, the Safdie brothers, Lena Dunham. You know, the list goes on and on. It's a pretty amazing list of filmmakers whose first films, you know, that we've shown at the festival, and then they go on, their second films play at Sundance or you know, our Star Wars or whatever. You know, so it's fun. And it's been a great community, because we don't just show their film and then we never see them again. A lot of these people have come back and been programmers for like 2-3 years after their own films have played there. So
there's a real, would you say there's, I don't know what the word is, fraternity, brotherhood, just this community?
Yeah, it's a large dysfunctional family. Or community of filmmakers, and we, you know, and a lot of great collaborations have come out of it. You know, Chris Nolan met his DP Wally Pfister there. I've met actually my last 3 DPs are all cinematographers that I met in Park City, you know, at SLAMDANCE. So it's but yeah, a lot of really great, you know, filmmakers and collaborations have come out of there.
I borrowed your phrase, SLAMDANCE, filmmakers by filmmakers for filmmakers, and we use that here at the Northeast.
Oh, great! Oh, fantastic! Thanks.
And I think people, you know, they get a sense like, oh, we actually know who you are. You know, we pay attention to what you're working on. You know, the focus is about you, the film, and you, the filmmaker, and your film. In our case, it's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had a number of people come to us and say, of all these, I think there's 6,000 film festivals that play around the world. And one guy described how he had just come back, he purchased his flight, paid for his hotel, and nobody even knew how to introduce him or the film that he had traveled, you know, on his own dime to get to introduce. And, you know, it's just like part of that is what got, to me, is perhaps getting lost in all these film festivals that have emerged just about in every town.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell filmmakers, you know, do your research on festivals, and I mean, Film Freeway is a good start, but that shouldn't be the be all and end all. You know, look at their archives, see what films and what filmmakers were there the year before, and then contact those filmmakers. Like any filmmaker is going to, if you contact them and say, hey, how was your experience at the Barbados Film Festival or the Omaha Film Festival. I'm wearing an Omaha Film Festival shirt right now.
Right on.
And they'll tell you, they'll say, if it was great, they'll say it was great. If it was lousy or a scam or whatever, they'll tell you, So do your research, because that you can save a lot of money just by, narrowing down that list of where you're applying and apply to the good ones, and there's a lot of great film festivals. Now, this year is a weird year for film festivals, as we well know. But by next spring, certainly, if not winter, festivals are going to be back. But even this year, there's a lot of great festivals that are doing online components and different sort of mixes. Starting in the fall, you're going to see festivals like New York Festival are going to have outdoor screenings plus online Q&As and things like that. So, which I think is exciting and is still going to be worthwhile for a lot of people.
Do you see SLAMDANCE following in the model of going online in January 2021? Are you going to wait and see what?
Still, I mean, we've started to take submissions, so we're having a festival one way or another. But we have a little bit of a luxury where we can kind of take our cue from whatever Sundance is doing, because SLAMDANCE is the same week essentially as Sundance, so we're a little shorter, but it's smack in the middle of Sundance. And so we can kind of take our cue from what they're doing. And as of now, they are still saying that, all systems go. And we're very close friends with the mayor of Park City, Andy Bierman. And so, the city of Park City wants to have people back this year. So if I had to put on the crystal ball, do you put on a crystal ball? You put on a record. You don't put on a crystal. But anyway, if I had to read the tea leaves, then we'll stick with that. I would say it's both us and Sundance are going to have, some element of a live festival, but also there will be sort of an increased online presence. I mean, SLAMDANCE has had online screenings or events or something since 1996, since our second year.
Wow.
We're certainly no stranger to doing, or at least trying to do things. It doesn't always work because Wi-Fi isn't always what you think it's going to be in Park City. But we've certainly have always tried to expand our footprint beyond, our physical footprint in Park City to make it, and we've had physical events all over the world, but online, we've had online film contests for years and things like that. So I suspect it's going to be some sort of interesting mix of live events and not live events. I sort of think back to what Park City was like in 2002. So right in January 2002, it was after 9/11, and it was also right before the Olympics. And that year, it was a really thinned out Park City. There were not a lot of extra people. All these extra festivals had disappeared, and in some ways it was good because the people that were there were the ones that really needed to be there, the filmmakers, the distributors, the film critics, and it kind of got rid of a lot of the riffraff. And I suspect that this year's Park City is going to be a little bit like that too. Like you won't have all the condo gifting suites and things like that, or paparazzi or things, but I think the people that need to be there will be there. If I had to guess, but no one knows.
So when a film does open up at Sundance, it can be really kind of stressful for filmmakers. We talk about that a little bit in our lab. And you do something unique when you start the SLAMDANCE. You write a poem. Is that right? Is that?
Yes. At SLAMDANCE, we have a really nice opening night event where we meet the filmmakers. It's really just for the filmmakers themselves, where we all introduce ourselves to each other in one big hot crowded room. So we'll see if that happens this year. And then we always kick things off with an opening night poem that I write that is somehow topically related to events at hand. And I've actually compiled many of these poems in my book, The Cheerful Subversive's Guide to Independent Filmmaking. There's a whole bunch of poems in here from over the years, and they're still kind of funny and interesting, and name check all kinds of fun people. The other nice thing by the way, during this pandemic is just coincidentally, I got a deal to do a second edition of the book. So I'm actually writing the second edition while I'm editing. And so I've got lots to keep me busy, but I'll have some more poems in the new book.
That's awesome. So it's the cheerful subversives guide to independent filmmaking.
Yes, the Cheerful Subversives Guide to Independent Filmmaking, but it's yeah, there you go. My daughter and I did the logo on the front, and yeah, and it's literally sort of nuts to bolts, soup to nuts, guide to making an independent film. It's not, it sort of assumes something, you've been to film school or you've picked up a camera somewhere along the way, but it's kind of what do you need to do to get to the next level to make a feature and cast A-list actors on a micro budget film, or what is the psychology behind working with a crew, and but it takes you through pre-production, production, post-production, festivals, how to take a Hollywood meeting. Do you drink the water? Do you drink the water? Do you not drink the water? That kind of thing. And it's it's packed filled with truth bombs and a lot of like good nuts and bolts information, but kind of with my hopefully witty edge to it. And there's a lot of I'm sort of known for doing a lot of workarounds and finding loopholes and things. So like, if you can't get an Oscar through the front door, there's ways to, get an Oscar through the back door. So yeah.
So on that note, I'll have to tell you sometime how I made it backstage at the closing night ceremonies of the Cannes Film Festival in 2013.
See, there's always a way. There's always a way to get things done, and hopefully done safely. And so I emphasize that a lot as well. So.
Well, that sounds like a great resource, and we'll be sure and let folks know about that. Another one of your films, Between Us, an award-winning feature starring Julia Stiles and Taye Diggs, played in 23 festivals, 7 countries, 50 plus city theatrical releases in the United States, and sold to 144 countries, plus screening on Netflix, Showtime Stars, and all digital outlets.
All of them, yes. So yeah, and George and David Harbour. It was kind of his first big. He'd been in other movies, but it was the first one he won awards for. And it was based on a play by Joe Hortua, an off-Broadway play, hit off-Broadway play. And so that was a fun film to work on. Actually, no, it was a miserable film to work on.
Well, along those lines, you were telling a story about trucks that crash on your set, and I've got
yeah.
A little bit about that on that film.
Yeah, I remember on that film. Like our first day of production, my line producer Mike Lynch came up to me and said, "Oh damn, I got really bad news." I go, "Whoa, it's our first day of shooting. What could be bad news?" He goes, "Oh well, one of our trucks, just hit a parked car out front of the location." And I said, "Well, that's great news." He goes, No. Didn't you hear what I just said? One of our trucks hit a parked car." I said, "Well, is everyone okay?" He said, "Yeah, everyone's okay." I said, "Well, then it's great news." He said, "What do you mean it's great news?" I said, "Don't you understand? This is the first time I've worked on a film, on one of my own films, where we've had more than one truck. You said trucks." I was like, I've made it. When one of the trucks is on the first day, we're in great shape. So.
And that reminds me, like, there's always that story where the PA backs the truck up into somebody else's car. So it's just,
they've backed it up into my car, so that's happened before. Yeah, no, it literally happens on the first day of every production, and you should expect that and plan for it and get insurance and take precautions, but don't be surprised when it happens either. So.
All right, just a few more questions here. Film financing question. You're kind of doing it 18 and a half. Can you shoot without your funding all in place?
Yes, yes, you can. And that's not unusual. You should have enough funding that you can be able to pay people and have insurance and to be able to, run your set safely. Like, I don't recommend not doing that, but you don't need money for post-production when you're just to go into production. I mean, you can always do what I'm doing, edit your film on your laptop, and then when it's done, raise more money later. So I don't think I've ever done a movie where we've had all the money in place when we went into shooting. I don't think that's ever happened. You know, some we've had more money than others. Some we're scrambling more or less during production. But yeah, if I waited to get the full budget of any of these films, I would still be waiting, and I would not have ever made any movies.
I don't, you know, I've seen it even on larger budget films where I serve as the locations scout, manager, whatever, various roles. But yeah, that funding sometimes doesn't come in until the last minute. You're overhearing conversations and saying, well, that part of the funding doesn't come in until this actor shows up, or we get to this stage. And I was like, wow, this is sort of a game of chicken, where you've got.
It really is. And I've been burned by it too. I mean, there was one film where we were 5 days away from shooting and the financing fell through. And to this day, I haven't made that movie, you know, so it doesn't always end well. I mean, let's put it that way. But on the other hand, I'm in good company. I mean, almost every director worth their salt has had some movie fall apart right before shooting. That's not at all uncommon. So I think once you know that and can accept it, it's, you know, then it gives you a little bit more confidence to go forward. And yeah, no, I mean, making a film is and raising that last, you know, money going into it, you know, it's like juggling on a unicycle, you know, on a tightrope over a pit of tigers, you know. But I mean, but the one thing that, you know, Robert Altman, you know, that he taught me and Dana years ago, and that we've really abided by, which is, you know, set a start date and tell everyone, you know, train's leaving the station. We're starting on that date, and are you in or you out, you know? And you just have to have kind of, you know, non-gender specific balls of steel to be able to say it and follow through. But I mean, on this film especially, you know, we had dropping out, you know, 5 days before the shoot. That's fine. We're shooting the movie regardless of what the cast, because it's always, at the end of the day, it is probably better in most cases to have shot the movie, you know, better to shoot the low budget movie with the cast you have and the crew you have than to wait around for 7 or 8 or 10 or infinite years and not shoot the big budget version of that same movie. So, you know, that's, I've seen people, I have friends, I mean, I've done it myself, where you're sort of waiting around for those perfect casts and those perfect money and the foreign sales and everything to come together. And you've never shot the movie. And I'm like, you know what, just, you know, this movie may not be a big hit. It may not, you know, I don't know, but at least it's a movie. It is another, you know, element in my body of work that I can be proud of. And as artists, you know, our small a artists, you know, that's all you can hope to do is just keep making movies, you know. I mean, that's your body of work, and eventually someone notices, hopefully, that you've had a body of work and a career. But if you sit around waiting, you know, for all the perfect elements to come, like, oh, there's, you know, I have to wait for everyone to be healthy and not have a pandemic, you know, you could literally, you know, wait forever. Don't go out now.
Great advice.
Yeah. So yeah. So when you were asking, you know, who's the cast in this movie? I mean, it's a great cast. They're not all super famous people though, you know, and that's okay. But even when I was making Between Us, I mean, we were 2 weeks away from shooting or starting rehearsal, and that was when we got Julia Stiles in the film, and it worked out great, you know. And sometimes it works out great, and sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you got a movie to show for it, you know. So, and that's ultimately what counts.
So we've got a question here from Tom. You're sort of been answering this, but if there's anything else, how would you ensure film production stays on schedule, and does it change during this time period to make a movie? Any COVID tips for navigating through?
Well, I think, you know, people are still trying to figure out what the appropriate safe protocols are. I mean, people, you know, and we're looking at how they're doing things in Iceland and Australia and England and you know, or how is Tyler Perry doing it in Georgia? You know, he's going to get started soon. And it seems like, the things that are going to make production, work again are, number one, sequestering yourself and the crew as best as possible. Number two, having as few people at, craft service and video village and things like that, having the fewest number of crew, having actors do their own makeup or at least do their own touch-ups. So there's things like that, which ironically, all of those things are, what a lot of indie films do anyway. So I think that's why I was saying earlier, I think indie films are going to be a lot more nimble about making these kinds of changes and adjustments to set protocol than, say, Hollywood, Netflix, studio production, where they've got 20 producers just huddled around Video Village. On an indie film, that just isn't a thing. You don't have to worry about that. So in some ways, I think we'll be more nimble. But again, I mean, if you've got a script that has 1 million locations, that's going to be challenging. But if you've got a script that takes place in one location or one campsite or one motel, that's kind of perfect for now. I mean, and I know people are shooting in their own houses. There's going to be a glut of these 2-person, pandemic dramas, and that's fine. They're figuring out ways to make it work. I think that the trickier part is going to be, number one, getting insurance for productions, because you need insurance, and insurers aren't going to cover COVID. I mean, they weren't, on indie films, they really weren't covering it before, and they're certainly not going to cover it now. So what do you do when an actor or a crew member, gets coronavirus on your set and tries to sue you? And then it'll be interesting to see, is there liability protection from Congress or wherever, to protect you? If the insurance companies aren't going to protect you, is there liability protection? Because what you don't want to have happen is, oh great, let's go make a fun little movie, and then all of a sudden somebody dies, because they got coronavirus, or their grandmother dies, or something like that. And then number one, you've got that on your conscience, and number two, they could, there could be legal action up the wazoo for that. So you don't want to do it dangerously or unsafely, because there's very real consequences to it.
Good point. There's lots of deeper dives into all that on related Zoom calls and things like that are coming out of the locations management, New York Production Alliance here, East Coast, West Coast, swapping notes from productions all around the world. If we're going to come out of this with a renaissance, so the arts, theater, concerts, everything is hit, shutting down. After we fully reopen, what's needed most is perhaps missing right now to make a renaissance happen here,
Well,
down the road?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot's going to depend on if there's a real vaccine, that's widely used or not, and then everybody can just go back to live events like we've had before, or if it's going to be sort of a staggered thing where there's no vaccine for a year or 2 years or longer, and people are just doing much more socially distant things, but still having some sort of live events. So, but I think that, look, the nice thing about film is that we have seen that they can be enjoyed in the comfort of your own home as much as they can be enjoyed in a live festival. I mean, I love live festivals, and I'm a big advocate for them. And I do think that that's, I mean, I see film as much more like a performance, as you would have a play or a music performance. Like, you only really, as a filmmaker, you can only, if you've made a comedy, you want to see your audience or hear them laughing. If you've made a horror film, you want to hear them shrieking, and you want to engage in Q&As and introductions and panel discussions and discussions in lobbies. That's what I love about film festivals, is you get all of that. You don't get that when you're playing on Netflix or playing on Amazon. It's a different kind of engagement. You don't even know how many people are watching the movie. It's the analytic black hole. So I hope that we get back to live events. But I think what may come out of it is, if there's when festivals come back, if there are these kind of hybridized things where, oh, all your Q&As are going to be online, you know, or which was starting to happen with some festivals, but technologically not everyone was quite there yet. You know, they didn't have Wi-Fi in the theater, and so it was tougher to do these things. Or if a filmmaker couldn't attend, could they Zoom in? I mean, I remember when we showed Between Us at SLAMDANCE, you know, out of competition. It was, I think, maybe our closing night film. We got Julia Stiles on Skype, you know, during the Q&A. I was there live, she was on Skype, and that was great. But it was literally one of the first times anyone had tried to do something like that. And it worked, and we were like shocked that it worked, you know, just from a technological standpoint. Now everyone is so accustomed to Zoom and things like that. I think it's going to be fun. You know, and look, drive-ins are going to have a renaissance now too, and not just drive-ins per se, but any kind of outdoor screenings. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of that at festivals. And there already happened. I mean, you know, the Barbados Festival would do screenings on beaches and things like that. And I think you're going to see more events like that, which are fun. You know, people like that kind of thing. So I don't know, you know, but one way or the other, it's certainly, you know, the pandemic has proved that people still need entertainment. So, you know, whether it's Tiger King or, you know, something else.
That's a great point. And we've got here in upstate New York, we still have a couple of drive-in theaters that are still in business. And it makes you think about all these other public spaces that amphitheaters and things like that.
I mean, one of our big successes from actually a year and a half ago was a film called The Vast of Night, which Amazon picked up. You know, it premiered at SLAMDANCE, and it's a fantastic film, and it is having its premiere in drive-ins. They're releasing it in as many drive-ins as they can find.
Outstanding, outstanding. Okay, here's a martini question. What's the best advice you've received coming up about filmmaking, your career life in general, that helped you and perhaps could help others who are tuning in?
Well, let me put it this way. The best advice I would give is marry well. So, yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm going to forget his name, but he gives that same advice. The director of The Godfather.
Scorsese. Yeah.
No,
Coppola.
Coppola. Yes, he was here speaking. Yeah. I don't know how old he is, but yeah, someone asked, a friend of mine, Justin. He's on our board. He asked the same question. He gave him that answer. What's the reason for that?
Because I mean, it's not, and I say it sort of in the broad sense, like it doesn't necessarily mean financially, but number one, financially, this is an unsustainable career. And making these indie films, you're always going to lose money. Your investors are always going to lose money. And as long as you know that going in, that's fine.
We're going to need to bleep out that last part, but we'll take care of it later.
Yeah. And there's no real clear way to actually make a living doing this. So you need to have a supportive partner who has a day job, you know, who has a real job. That's the easiest way to think about it. But you also need, like, psychologically, you need a supportive partner because it can be very lonely doing these things too. So.
That's really great advice, and I guess I'm a really solid example of this because my wife, who's working from home here in the next room over, has really carried us during some really lean times, and it allows me to continue what I'm doing and do shows like this and do the Northeast Filmmakers Lab. And we had Alex Ferrari on here a few weeks ago, a serial entrepreneur, you know, and he's like, you know, I make money from 5% of the stuff that I do. 95% of the stuff I give away. I'm like, oh, that's what I've been doing, you know, and that's how you sustain the industry. It's really tough. But that helps everybody.
Yeah. No, Alex is a great example of that. And he's coined the term I can't even say it, filmtrepreneur.
Yeah. Leave it at that. Yeah. Filmtrepreneur.
Yeah. Which I think is true. Like, you kind of have to do that and create something. I mean, or have some sort of side hustle. I mean, look, Robert Altman he made money on a post-production studio that he owned near facility. You know, like all these, you know, Coppola makes wine to keep things going, to keep the lights on. So, yeah, so being flexible and nimble about the medium, like, you know, you know, we've got a pandemic. Okay, well, let's do a podcast now, or let's do a, you know, an audio play. I know a lot of filmmakers that are doing, you know, things like that right now, and not getting hung up on, oh, I must make a 90-minute film, or I must do a 23-minute sitcom. You know, be nimble, work in plays, work in audiobooks, you know, whatever it takes, as long as you're still using the same creative muscles. It doesn't really matter if you call yourself a podcaster or a filmmaker or a web designer or whatever it is.
Great advice, Dan. Thank you for your time. We've gone over. I appreciate the extra time that you've given us. And I'd love to have you come back. We have our annual 3-day Northeast Filmmakers Lab, November 13th through the 15th. And I'd love to be in touch with you about that. I wish you all the success with 18 and a half.
Thank you very much. And yeah, and if people want to sort of follow along with what I'm up to, I'm on Twitter at Dan Mirvish, and the Facebook, and I think I'm on Instagram too, although I haven't quite figured out how to use it. And then, or just go to danmirvish.com. So
we'll be sure and post those things here. And if there's anything else, we'd be sure and let people know about the book, The Cheerful, yes, Subversive Guide to Independent Filmmaking.
Yes.
Your daughter did that cartoon on the front cover, you said?
Yeah, together. Yeah, and it's from Focal Press and Routledge, so it's you can get it on Amazon, and then hopefully the next edition will be out soon too.
Fantastic. Dan, thanks again. And thanks everybody who's joined us this afternoon. Next Thursday, our guest will be Joe Carr, Josh Weinseller's. That's June 4th. And the week after will be Emily Best.
Oh, well, give my best to Emily.
I will. Folks, you can register for the Northeast Filmmakers Lab, the 7th edition, now online at cinemaexchange.org. If your business would like to sponsor future episodes, maybe you can't do it now, but a year from now, keep us in mind. Donate, cinemaexchange.org/donate. Thanks again, Dan. Really appreciate you being with us and spending time and sharing your advice with us.
You betcha. All right. Thanks for having me on.
Everyone enjoy, be well, stay healthy, stay connected. This has been Mike Moyne for Check the Gate. Our gate is good. Let's move on, people.